Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, December 2nd, 2018, and we are live. Sunday, December 2nd, 2018, and we're live. Welcome to the African History Network show. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. Hope everybody's doing well. This is the first show of December, and you know, last weekend we were off the air because it was the holiday weekend, Thanksgiving, so no live shows. But I did broadcast on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network. You want to go watch that broadcast? I did. I dealt with Thanksgiving, a national day of mourning for African Americans and Native Americans, aka Misgiving Day. And I dealt with the whole history of Thanksgiving, and I dealt with how the story that's been told about the quote-unquote first Thanksgiving in 1621 in Plymouth, Massachusetts is not what really happened. And I also dealt with that history from the Wampanoag Native American perspective as well, because that was a Native American tribe, right, who helped protect those settlers who were on the Mayflower. Some of them called pilgrims, but all of them were not pilgrims. So you want to go watch that at the African History Network on Facebook or our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotep on YouTube. All right, so tonight's show, we have a lot to talk about, and we have a guest coming up at the bottom of the hour as well. We're going to be joined by Mr. Charles Farrell, Vice President of Programming at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, to talk about the progressive programs and events they have coming up at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Also tonight, we'll give you an update on what's going on in the case of Botham Shem John, shot and killed by former Dallas police officer Amber Guyger. She was indicted on Friday on the charge of murder. The grand jury came back with the indictment of murder. So we'll talk some about that. You know, I've been given unprecedented coverage dealing with that case, separating fact from fiction, because there was a whole lot of misinformation and nonsense floating around on social media that was rooted in fiction. So we had to spend a lot of time separating fact from fiction, okay? And so we'll give you an update on that case. And then, you know, we talked about 2 weeks ago, we talked about the police shooting in Robbins, Illinois of Jamel Roberson, who was an African-American security guard, 26 years old, who subdued a man who was shooting up the nightclub. And he was shot and killed by a white police officer who didn't know he was a security guard, even though people were yelling out, "He's security, he's security." Well, we have so he was a good guy with a gun who was shot and killed by police, a black good guy with a gun who was shot and killed by police. I don't think the NRA still has made a statement about his killing. But then we have another case out of Alabama, Hoover, Alabama, of a man named E.J. Bradford, who's another black guy with a gun killed by police. So we have an update on that story as well. Roland Martin interviewed Attorney Benjamin Crump to give an update on that story. That's another shocking tragedy. And the NRA is silent here also. E.J. Bradford was legally carrying a gun, okay? And he was shot and killed by police, basically on site. And then, you know, we talked about the story of, the story out of Mississippi, dealing with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, and her public hanging comments. And she was in a runoff election that took place this past Tuesday, November 27th, against Mike Espy, all right? And Mike Espy lost. He came up short about 69,000, 70,000 votes, but that's the closest a Democrat has come in a senatorial election in the last 30, 40 years there in Mississippi. Okay, well, Roland Martin did a story talking about Medgar Evers and the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission. The Mississippi Sovereignty Commission, okay? So we're going to talk some about that tonight as well, because this was a commission funded by taxpayer dollars that spied on civil rights activists there in Mississippi to undermine what they were doing, spied on the NAACP, spied on activists who were trying to register African Americans to vote, okay, and just trying to do what the U.S. Constitution, 15th Amendment, 1870 said we could do. So we'll talk some about that. The Mississippi Sovereignty Commission at Medgar Evers. All right. And then this past Thursday, the Black Legacy Coalition held a press conference at the Cass Commons to protest the Thomas Jefferson exhibit coming to the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, and to say the progressive programming and to air some other concerns. So we'll share a story dealing with that as well. You know, we talked about that some here on the show. We've had Sister Neb and Dr. Kafense Chike on to talk about what's going on there with that coalition. Friday, the 41st president, George H.W. Bush, passed away, okay, 94 years old. And there are a lot of people, you know, when this happens, there's a lot of outpouring of condolences, and there's unprecedented news coverage talking about the life of the president, things like this. Well, News1.com has an article dealing with how social media, specifically African Americans on social media, remember the racist Willie Horton ad as President George H.W. Bush dies at age 94. We'll talk a little bit about that. And speaking of presidents, this past week was a horrible week for Donald John Trump, who, as I've said before, going back to January 2017, I think this fool is going to be forced to resign from office. I've said that, and more, week after week, and with Democrats gaining control of the House of Representatives, they picked up 39, possibly 40 seats. They take power January 3rd. There are up to 85 investigations, that Democrats can launch dealing with Trump, finances, Russia, all different types of things like this, right? Well, this past week, in addition to Paul Manafort being exposed, really is like a double agent, okay, for the Trump camp, as well as trying to be a witness for Mueller. But Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney for at least 10 years, pled guilty to lying to Congress about the Moscow Project. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that, because that was breaking news, and we know Michael Cohen is a witness. And not only is he a witness, not only has he been interviewed by Mueller's team for 70 hours, right? Cohen has tapes as well. Michael Cohen has tapes that he's turned over to Mueller. Okay? All right, so we'll deal with this and a lot more tonight on the African History Network show. Those watching on Facebook, share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Follow us at The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook, okay? Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, seen, and heard about yourself, okay? So we focus on a number of different topics here. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. We just sent one out about an hour ago, email newsletter, dealing with the topics for tonight's show. And also, if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, Kwanzaa's coming up. Christmas is coming up. I have presentations dealing with all this. We know Dr. King Day is coming up, African American History Month as well. Email me at info, I-N-F-O, at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, info, I-N-F-O, at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or you can give us a call, 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003. All right? Okay, and current promotion right now at the African History Network is spend $100, get 20% off your entire order. Use promo code AHN20 off 2018, and we have that right on the home page of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, so, you know, I've been covering this story dealing with the killing of Botham Shem John which took place Thursday, September 6, 2018. And when there have been new updates, you know, we try to cover those here as much as we can. So the story, I saw earlier in the week that the case was taken before a grand jury, okay? And DallasNews.com has some of the best coverage of this story. Dallas Morning News, DallasNews.com, right? So former Dallas officer Amber Guyger booked on murder charge in Botham Shem John slaying and then freed on bond, okay? So this story is from Friday, November 30th, 2018. Now, the family of Botham Shem John, so if we remember, he was killed in his home. She said she gave conflicting statements when she was interviewed for the affidavit for the Dallas Police Department. She said one thing. When she was interviewed by the Texas Rangers, she came up with this whole fantastical story, all right? But the family of Botham Shem John expressed relief but little joy this past Friday, November 30th, after former Dallas police officer Amber Guyger was indicted on murder, okay? Bertram John, the father of Botham Shem John, said, "We really are not happy. We really are not happy, but we take consolation. We take comfort at this time," okay? Now, a Dallas County grand jury delivered the indictment against Amber Guyger after weighing the evidence against the fired Dallas officer Monday through Wednesday, this past Monday through Wednesday. Now, if you remember, the district attorney, her name is Faith Johnson. She is a Republican, African-American woman. She's a Republican. She was appointed to that position by the governor. She lost her re-election Tuesday, November 6th, okay, in the midterm election. She lost her re-election. But she's still in the office until early January when the new district attorney is sworn in. So her office is handling this, and she gave there was a press conference, and she spoke at the press conference as well. If you remember, we shared information on this show where she said that if the evidence supported going after the charge of murder before a grand jury, then she would definitely pursue that charge, okay? So Amber Guyger, 30, initially had been arrested on a manslaughter charge 3 days after the September 6th shooting. The manslaughter charge, once again, is what was recommended by the Texas Rangers because they were called in by the police chief to do the investigation, okay? So the charge of manslaughter was not from the district attorney. That was from the Texas Rangers. We're going to go to this clip right here in just a minute from a press conference that was held after the verdict to indict. Let's go to this clip now.
All of the
this
facts.
one?
So, yes,
And to clarify for them the law, we were determined
Turn it up here. Okay,
to present to this grand jury all of the facts and to clarify for them the law so that they could make the decision they thought was right and just on behalf of Botham John.
It's solely a better feeling for the family that this grand jury returned an indictment for murder. We understood what this city was facing. We understood what this entire country was facing. At the time that Botham's innocent life was taken away from him, he was not committing a penal offense. So we knew that this case had a lot of significance.
We know that a grand jury indictment is a probable cause hearing. It doesn't mean that the case itself will be a slam dunk. And in fact, we are concerned and we are focused that the criminal trial itself will be anything but, and it will require equal preparation, equal commitment by the district attorney's office under John Crusoe.
We would not sleep until there's a conviction against Amber Guyger, because we understand and we realize that one of the places that you should feel secure at is at home. And if you can't feel secure in your own home, then it sends a strong message to everyone. So we are just happy that we have gotten this outcome. But we're going to continue to work. We're going to continue to work hard.
Okay. All right. So that was from the press conference that was held after the grand jury returned the indictment on a murder charge for Amber Guyger. And you heard S. Lee Merritt, the lead attorney for the family, and one of the other attorneys for the family as well. Hey, we're coming up on a break. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a minute.
Pop quiz. Which is
all right, guys. Hey, how you doing, Rachel? You all right? Okay, guys, stand by. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Okay, invite your friends to tune in also. I want to let you know we have a current promotion. Spend $100 or more, get 20% off your entire order. We just posted the information here on the thread of the broadcast. It's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Can you turn that down in here a little bit? Please, Rachel, thank you. It's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also, we have the online courses that I teach. They're all on demand. We have a special bundle pack where you get the Black Panther 6 DVD bundle pack, plus you get the 10 online courses as well. Okay, it's all on sale, $80. That's a $180 value. That's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right on the home page, we'll post a link right here. And those online courses are all on demand. They include Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, December 2nd, 2018. Sunday, December 2nd, 2018. And we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. And visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of our audio podcasts are there. We have YouTube videos, my DVD lectures. Our latest bundle pack is the Africans that were here before Columbus. The Africans that were here before Columbus. And it's very timely that we have that bundle pack. 1 October 2018, you know, some people celebrated Columbus Day. October 12th was the federal holiday of Columbus Day. And Columbus never came to this land we call the United States of America. Okay, when you look at where he went on his 4 voyages, and I show you where he went in a lot of my presentations, he goes into Cuba, the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Panama, things like this. He never comes to the land we call the United States of America. All right, so I find it interesting that people are still celebrating Columbus Day. But we deal with, you know, that African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. There's a double lecture that I did with Dr. David M. Hotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. We have a lecture from Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, who wrote the book, the groundbreaking book, dealing with They Came Before Columbus. Okay, so that's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Remember the current promotion, spend $100, get 20% off. There's an article that Renoka Rashidi posted on his Facebook page, and we're, you know, Facebook friends, and I've interviewed him a number of times. We've had him here on the show before. World traveler, historian, Renoka Rashidi. There's an article from dailymail.co.uk from, when is this from? November 29th, what was that, Thursday? Ancient artifacts reveal all of Africa was the cradle of humankind. Ancient artifacts reveal that all of Africa was the cradle of humankind, not just Central East Africa. 2.4 million year old stone tools and animal bones found in Algeria, which is in North Africa, challenge idea that human ancestors originated only in the East. And if you have been watching my Facebook Live broadcast, if you've been listening to our show for any time, you know that I deal with a lot of these archaeological discoveries. And Juvenile had a song back in 1998, 97, 98 called Back That Thing Up. Every time these discoveries come out, they keep having to push the dates back. They keep having to back that thing up. So there was a discovery that came out of Morocco in about June of 2017 that I talked about in one of my online classes. And this dealt with remains of Homo sapiens that were found that date back 300,000 to 350,000 years ago, which were at least 100,000 years older than the oldest human fossils of Homo sapiens found in Ethiopia that date back about 198,000 years ago. So the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. They keep having to back that thing up. But you look at this archaeological discovery, and when you study these discoveries, and the people who've taken my classes, they've seen this. They hear me talk about this. With all of these archaeological discoveries, the scientists, the archaeologists, the anthropologists, the paleontologists, they keep saying that we have to this changes everything. They say we have to totally rethink this whole theory. Okay? This discovery right here, and I sent an email with this article in it to Dr. David Imhotep today, because he's almost done with his second book. The follow-up to The First Americans Were Africans Documented Evidence is coming out in January of 2019. It's called The First Americans Were Africans Revisited, and it has about 200 additional pages, a lot more research. Okay? So when the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. Okay, artifacts found in Algeria have been dated to 1.9 million and 2.9 million years old. Experts say they're similar to 2.6 million year old tools previously found in Ethiopia. Researchers now suspect human ancestors actually dispersed all through Africa. Okay, so this discovery right here is groundbreaking, but these discoveries come out every other month. If you read National Geographic, you look at the articles we post at the African History Network on our Facebook fan page, you know, these articles, these discoveries are coming out every other month. In the new study published in the journal Science, not World Star Hip Hop, but the journal Science, researchers now reveal similar tools had already made it to the northern tip of the continent not long after, by 2.5 million years ago. The Ayan Burchet archaeology, which is technologically similar to the Gona Odoan, shows that our ancestors ventured into all corners of Africa, not just East Africa. Okay, said Dr. M. Sanuni, the lead author and director of the Ayan Hannock project. The evidence from Algeria has changed earlier views regarding East Africa being the cradle of humankind. The evidence from Algeria has changed earlier views regarding East Africa being the cradle of humankind. Actually, the entire Africa was the cradle of humankind. Okay? Okay, researchers with the Ayan Hannock project have been investigating Northern Africa sites for the last 2 decades, uncovering new clues on early hominin presence. The team discovered archaeological materials in 2 levels of a geological formation at a site called Ayan Burchet, dating to 2.4 million and 1.9 million years ago. Okay? All right, so check this out, dailymail.co.uk. Check out the journal Science. This is groundbreaking, and this is something that Dr. David Imhotep has been talking about, right? And we know the more research they do, the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets. The more research they do, the older we get. You look at the discovery that Dr. Albert Goodyear discovered back in 2004 in Allendale County, South Carolina. And they found an African presence dating back at least 51,700 years ago. This is before Native Americans existed. This is before Native Americans existed. This is, they found 13 different disciplines, 13 different types of evidence, okay, that proved an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. And then we know the Khoisan, who come from Southern Africa, have the oldest DNA on the planet. We know they were in South America going back at least 56,000 years ago. All right. So we have the bundle pack at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, that ties all this history together. It's called the Africans that were here before Columbus. The Africans that were here before Columbus. Yes, August 20th, 1619 did happen. I'm not saying the transatlantic slave trade did not happen. Yes, it did. I'm saying the way that we have been taught that it happened is not exactly how it happened. And we have to understand that the last 50,000 years of history and a chronology of historical events. Also, we have to understand the chronology of historical events, okay? And when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we also have to deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors as well, okay? So visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. After this interview with Charles Farrell from the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, we'll pick back up on the story dealing with Amber Guyger being indicted, and we'll get these other stories. We'll get these other stories also. Okay. All right. So we're joined here in the studio by one of my friends, Brother Charles Farrell, Vice President of Programming at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History right here in Detroit. It is a jewel, it is a treasure here in Detroit, and we definitely need to support it, okay? And I told Charles I'm making a commitment to him because I believe in the programs, the progressive programs that they have at the museum so much. I told him we're going to bring him on once a week to help, so he can let you know about these programs. And most of these programs that take place, the majority of them are free. But even if they aren't free, you should still support them also. Okay. So how you doing today, brother?
I'm very good. I appreciate the opportunity, Brother Michael.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, look, man, I know there's a lot going on at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. You have a lot of progressive programs. You brought people in like Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Maulana Karenga. I talked to Dr. Karenga's wife today. You brought in Professor James Small, Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Malefe Ketiasante, all these top scholars. And I don't know any other entity in Detroit, and I know this is not a slight on anybody, but I don't know any other entity that consistently brings in people of that caliber. Okay, so what is tell us about some of the upcoming programs taking place that people need to know and attend.
Absolutely. Really appreciate the opportunity, as indicated, Michael, and certainly the Charles H. Wright Museum is a jewel in the crown of the African diaspora.
Yes.
And being consistent with the mission of Dr. Wright to dispel myths and tell the truth.
Absolutely.
I have a broad range of programming coming up next. I just want to mention those who had an opportunity to come out on Noel Day from 11 to 5 p.m. We had a signature presentation concert by Reverend Sekou and Freedom Fighters. Very wonderful musical concert that was politically based around issues taking place in the country, such as the killings of African Americans in the street, being exonerated by the police. But he was able to weave that in with a very strong musical message that was well received. For the month of December, we have 9 remaining programs.
Okay.
The next program is actually on the 11th, Tuesday. We have a great artist series. It's being promoted featuring Walter Bailey, a former Black Panther, who's an artist, called An Artistic Journey from the 20th Century Expressionism to the 21st Century and Beyond. He's created a new genre of art that he'll be presenting on Tuesday at 6 p.m. This program is free and open to the public. We're following up that Saturday, December 15th at 2 p.m. with Marvin X. Marvin X, one of the brothers, the founders of the Black Arts aesthetic, the Black Arts movement out of L.A.
In the 60s.
That's correct.
Yes.
Actually, he was a contemporary and associate of Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. This book is called Notes of the Artistic Freedom Fighter. I want to mention that our programs is founded actually around Malcolm X as a principle to understand that we promote literacy.
Right.
Reading. Malcolm developed himself through reading.
Yes.
And last year we sold over $28,000 in gross sales in books. This year we have eclipsed that.
Wow.
As you know, Detroit and Michigan on the whole, but Detroit has the lowest fourth grade meat reading scores in the country. Is criminal what they've done to our school system.
Absolutely.
That's one of the reasons why we also, Brother Michael, have Freedom School, an independent freedom school.
Yes.
Founded, actually run by Dr. Gloria House. What's important about that is that the school is taught by former professors, university professors, teaching the basics of English, math, and science, but also the cultural arts. And we have on our grounds a garden that the children learn to grow their own food. It's really focused around self-determination.
Right. With the Freedom School, let people know, when does the Freedom School meet? How can they enroll their children in the Freedom School?
Well, actually, the Freedom School meets every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we have an adult session that occurs after that.
Because we know the adults need it too. Go ahead.
Absolutely. In fact, it's intergenerational knowledge that we are attempting to foster, and I can talk about that a little bit later on some initiatives that we have, where we had such luminaries as Quincy Troop go out to speak in the schools at Paul Robeson, Malcolm X Academy, and Marcus Garvey Academy, 2 schools, incidentally, that we've adopted with other Detroit public schools. So I'm just referencing that because we will be selling the book, Notes of the Artistic Freedom Fighter by Marvin, that's kicking off his national tour on that book.
And what date is he coming?
He's coming Saturday, December 5th at 2 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, we like that to be a crowded event. We like the whole Detroit and listening audience to come out and support and listen and learn from him. This year is the centennial year of our founder, Dr. Charles Howard Wright.
Yes.
And we started the Wright Life series to honor him. And part of doing so, we had encountered last year during our Women's History Month the great author Harriet A. Washington, who wrote the groundbreaking book Medical Apartheid, which looked at experimentations on African Americans from the post-colonial times to the present. She's a professor at Columbia. Her book is a must-read, which details not only experimentations, which people may know like Tuskegee, but there are, for example, in Detroit, experimentation going on currently with recent use of experimental blood on African American patients. Her work led to the dismantling of the Sims statue, the gentleman who developed gynecology practices on the bodies of black women.
Yeah, J. Marion Sims.
That's correct.
Yes.
His statue came down because of her work.
In Baltimore, yes.
That's correct. Now, so we've been engaging her on a monthly basis to look at film. She's doing a film series. We're going to screen a film called Pinky, and she's going to decode that, do a critical analysis around that, which is the second area of our programming. We look at reading, critical analysis, independent thinking as a foundation for informed activism.
Right. And now that's Sunday, December 16th. Is that
December 16th.
Sunday, December 16th.
At 2 p.m.
Okay, and let me just say this quickly. Those watching around the country, we broadcast on Facebook Live. This will be on our audio podcast, YouTube. The Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History is where the body of Aretha Franklin lay in repose for 2 days. So people saw this all across the country and around the world. This is that museum. This is the type of progressive programming going on at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. And African Americans in Detroit and the surrounding area, we need to take advantage of this programming, and we need to support it as well. Go ahead, brother.
I just want to talk about the architectural construct of the museum itself. You know, what's most noted is this large dome. That 100-foot dome by 50 feet represents a village. And actually, you see the architectural design to represent a village. It also has in the center echoing museum, so it's a very sacred place.
Yes.
Which
in the rotunda.
The call and response.
Yes.
That's core to our culture.
Yes.
So this is a place where people come to get married. Of course, Coleman Young laid in state there, Rosa Parks laid in state, and many other notables. But it's a sacred place and has the largest permanent exhibition in the country of the African American experience called And Still I Rise, a core exhibit that we asked every citizen to come and experience and still our rise. Brother Michael,
Yes.
after the 16th, we're going to pause as we prepare for our annual celebration of Kwanzaa.
Okay.
We actually had Malana Karinga, the Honorable Dr. Malana Karinga, in for the 50th anniversary of Kwanzaa, and as you mentioned, we just spoke with him. He'll be returning back to Detroit next May, as he's writing a book on Malcolm X. We'll talk about that later, but as we look at Kwanzaa, we engage the community, and community organizations come out. So the first day, as you know, is Unity.
Right, Umoja.
Right. African Liberation Day Committee will be leading that presentation Wednesday, December 26th. Every year is the 26th through the 1st. So at 6 p.m. We'll start. We'll have a community of vendors to support,
Yes.
practicing all the principles every day, but we'll single out unity. In fact, the several first principles are around unity. It's a very important principle, and it's focused for the first fruit, the children.
Yes.
And we have to pass on our information to the next generation. On that Thursday, we have another very strong and important organization, the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement. Here's a movement that is in the tradition of Malcolm X, with roots with Obadeli, Amari Obadeli of Republic of New Africa, Chokwe Lumumba. It's being led by Sister Shoshana Shakur.
Yes, I know Shoshana.
Chokwe's family, Atari Shakur, Brother Bomani.
Yeah, I know Bomani.
And it's Thursday the 27th at 6 p.m. All of these celebrations, we light the candles, we do libations, we call on the spirit of the ancestors,
Right.
to join us in lifting up our continual need and to fight and to resist and to advance our struggle.
Right, right. Now, that one I heard they're gonna have a dynamic speaker is the keynote speaker also.
Oh, absolutely. You want to talk about that?
So I'll be speaking again the second day of Kwanzaa, Kuchi Chagalia, for the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement. Brother Bomani, Sister Shoshana asked me to do a presentation once again. So I think this is my 5th year speaking. So you don't want to miss this presentation that I'm going to do, dealing with I deal with some of the history of Kwanzaa, how Kwanzaa actually ties into traditional African first fruit harvest celebrations coming out of ancient Kemet, Nubia, West Africa like Ghana and Nigeria, things like this. And then I tied into things going on today. I'm going to tie it into the film Black Panther and tie it into Wakanda, what Wakanda really means, deal with some African history. So you don't want to miss this. That's the 27th. What day of the week is that?
That's Thursday.
Thursday.
The 27th. And
Right.
as we come to...
You want to come to the first day also, okay? Because they're going to beat me up. I know all these groups. So you want to come to the first day as well. That's the African Liberation Day Committee, Paul Taylor and all those brothers, Brother Balagoon, and all those brothers over there. So you want to come to that one too? Okay.
Yeah, I have to say that Honorable Joanne Watson
Yes.
also involved, as many others, such as Gregory McKenzie and
Brother G-Mac.
Many others to name.
Right.
There. So, looking at Friday, Kwanzaa, we're going to celebrate collective work and responsibility.
Okay.
Ujima with Nsaroma Institute.
Yes.
Look, again, one of the strong aspects of our history is the development of black African-centered schools in Detroit.
Absolutely.
We're noted for in the country.
Like Brother Maliki Kinney.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And Jaman Jordan.
Brother Jaman,
will
yes.
be involved in this particular program. Again, Friday the 28th at 6 p.m. Saturday the 29th at 6 p.m. We have a special speaker coming in from Vegas, focused around Futuronomics, mastermind, Katie Obi Owadu.
Yeah, I know Brother Katie.
Yeah, he's positioning your enterprise to win in the new economy.
LIB Radio. I know Brother Katie. I've been on this show before. Yeah.
Well, phenomenal. So he will be our guest. Last year we had Dr. Claude Anderson.
I know.
who we spoke with recently and sold $2,500 of his books to seed the community. Then we have Ashula on Sunday, the 30th at 3 p.m.
Okay.
That's December 30th at 3 p.m.
Okay.
Then we're going to close out.
That's part of Kwanzaa also?
That's correct.
Okay, that's the group putting it on.
That's correct.
Okay, organizing it. Okay.
That's correct. I want to talk about the fact that that's Purpose, Nia is the principal.
Yes.
On Monday, December 31st at 3 p.m., we have Kwanzaa Creativity focused on, that's Kumba, with hip-hop groups.
Okay.
Yeah, this is new. This is exciting. This is youth focused.
Exactly.
We have Malcolm X Elliott, a performer who performed for us during our Black Friday Cooperative Economics, very young, conscious group, as you can see by the name, Malcolm X Elliott.
They performed toward the end, that last hour?
That's correct.
Yeah, they were very good. They were very good.
That's correct. Now, this is actually going to be moderated and led by a sister.
Okay.
You know, our tradition is matrilineal out of Africa. We always start with our women and promote our strong women. We have Mama Soul, who will be moderating and leading that program, I should say, as she introduced and opens up the program.
The singer Mama Soul?
Oh, correct.
Oh, she's fantastic.
The one and only.
Oh, she's fantastic.
Mama Soul from Flint, now by way of Atlanta.
Yes.
Mama Soul will introduce Malcolm X Elliott. We also have another important performer, Zubair Burton. Zubair is the son of the great Njia Kai.
Yeah, I know Zubair. Yeah,
and
he's
at Howard University, but he has another strong youth, conscious-focused hip-hop group that's going to raise the roof. It's going to be followed by Mama Soul, who's going to close it out in a very high way. And that's how we're ending our year of reparations. This has been, every year, Michael, we reflect on what is the history that's coming. Where are we as a people? And we conceptualize a yearly theme. As you know, for 67 was the year of rebellion. We looked at rebellions globally to understand the large historical arc, to be able to better discern Detroit's uprising. And we coded and named it as it was, a rebellion, not a riot. As most people,
it was a rebellion.
It was a rebellion. And we let the nation in that call, actually leveraging over 135 scholars as part of our scholarly advisory board, which is informing our programs, I should say. So it's not just an independent development. This is collaborative program development where we leverage scholars from around the country and the world, I should say, including, as we brought in the former First Lady of Haiti, Randall Robinson from St. Kitts, or Hilary Beckel, which incidentally, this year is the year of reparations, going to the root of the word, to repair. To repair what's broken, repairing and rebuilding our global community. So it's a very broad understanding on how we need to repair our relationship with each other, how we need to meditate, eat the proper foods, take in the proper type of music, engage in our, so it's a very broad sense on what do we need to repair and how do we need to rebuild, knowing that's in our DNA, right? That we're very ancient and future people.
And let me say this very quickly. I want you to hit on this, and if you need a few more minutes, man, we can hold you over the break also if you need a few more minutes. You and I have talked about this in the past, especially last year, the difference between a riot and a rebellion. And you had certain people in the community who kept calling the 67 rebellion a riot. And when we study 1967, there were 159 violent uprisings all across this country. That's been documented. All of them went on the scale of Detroit, but that's been documented. I've dealt with this as well. Explain the difference between a riot and a rebellion, and why what happened in July 23rd, 67 in here in Detroit, starting over on 12th and Claremont, why that was a rebellion and not a riot.
Well, basically, looking at the definitions themselves, right? We have to go and kind of be grounded in this language that we have to take on, this English language, as opposed to our African language.
Absolutely.
And understand that there's a criminality to the aspect of a riot. There's almost a dismissing of the fact that it's rooted out of response to oppression.
Yes.
Rebellion is a response to authority, and in terms of the state representing itself through the police. So anytime you are fighting, engaging in action against the police on a scale, then that's a rebellion. So what happened? It was Lyndon Johnson himself that invoked the Insurrection Act of 1807. Insurrection is synonymous with rebellion. Actually, that act is to put down a rebellion. That was Johnson himself.
Right.
So there was an eclipse of the local police, the state police, the National Guard, the 101 Division, the 82nd Airborne. These are divisions that were fighting in Vietnam. Who came here, of course.
Yeah, they called them National Guard here. Yeah.
Pratt, Jaja was here.
Yes.
As part of the 82nd Airborne. There was also the 902nd Military Intelligence Group, which is referenced in the book by William Pepper, designed to eliminate any militants under the cover of the rebellion.
Right. Now, you had Dr. William Pepper at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, right?
Absolutely. He came in on the 50th anniversary of Dr. King. We called it the federal assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Actually, Coretta, his wife, suggested that people study the book, The Plot to Kill King, in order to understand him. So I thought it was very important that we explore a broader understanding of what happened to Dr. King, and we'll continue to do that. Just to get a peek ahead really quickly, just the level of programming that we're doing, Michael.
We got 2 minutes before the break, but we can hold you over.
I'll just summarize to tell the audience that we have 10 programs coming in January, 15 in February during our Carter G. Woodson's month, and 13 programs to celebrate our Women's History Month.
In March.
That's correct. But we're asking the listening audience to support this museum through membership.
Yes.
It's very important. It's a very nominal fee if you divide 365 days into $35. $35 for a general membership. Those who have broader economic means, please support this institution. This city is 83% African American, and it's the leading African American populous city in the country. And the way we have to demonstrate our love for each other is by supporting our own institutions. And it's good for people to come and visit the programs and to purchase the books, but it's also equally important that they join as members. So this is a call out during our year of reparations in terms of what we need to do and how we spend our resources. Let's support our own institutions that's allowing us to have these type of wonderful venues and presentations and engagements.
So even though it's free for the majority of these programs for people to attend, it's not free for you all to put this on.
It's not free, and of course our exhibitions come at a nominal cost. I'm only $8, probably the lowest in the country when you look at other entry fees to exhibitions. We do have, for example, the Think exhibition on
Aretha Franklin.
We have Oh My Fancy about black hair. And of course we have, that's in our 2 galleries, AT&T and Chase, and then we have our core exhibition, which we asked everyone to understand that. Of course, that exhibition, based on modern knowledge of the Peters map, for example, can be a
map of the world.
Oh, the map of the world in terms of the large presence of those countries below the equator that are much larger than people understand.
We'll hold it right there. We'll hold you over for a few more minutes after the break, okay? Can you stick around for a minute?
Absolutely.
Okay. Visit thewright.org, WRGHT, thewright.org. You can get the calendar. You can get the calendar of events there, and go to the museum, 315 Warren Avenue in Detroit. Get a membership for yourself, for your family. We'll talk about this on the other side of the break on Michael M. Hotep, the African History Network show, 9:10 a.m. Superstation. We'll be back in a few minutes.
That's right.
Okay. All right, we'll be back in a couple minutes. All right, stand by, guys. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Hey, if you want to donate to the African History Network, you could donate. Hey, turn that down, son. Turn that down, son. Thanks. You can donate at paypal.me/the AHN show. Paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us to keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting the African History Network show. Helps us pay the bills also, okay? And remember, our current promotion at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, our current promotion is spend $100, get 20% off, okay? Spend $100, get 20% off. That's running through Monday, December 3rd. And we have the promo code right there on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can use that on the majority of our bundle packs also. And then my DVD lectures are there, my bundle packs also. And we have the new bundle pack, The Africans That Were Here Before Columbus, The Africans That Were Here Before Columbus at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Welcome back to the African History Network show. We are in our second hour. Time goes by really fast. We need more time, but you know, hey, when you have a lot of content, it goes by quickly. Hey, it is Sunday, December 2nd, 2018. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, okay? Coming up after this segment with our brother Charles Farrell from the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, we'll talk a little bit more about Amber Guyger being indicted on murder in Texas for the killing of Botham Shem John. We'll talk about E.J. Bradford, another good guy with a gun, a black good guy with a gun, shot and killed by police in Alabama, in the Alabama shopping mall. Police first said he was the shooter shooting up the mall. Then they find out, oh, we made a mistake. We shot and killed him, shot him in the face, let him bleed to death. He wasn't the killer. Oops. Then, you know, remember, wasn't that mystical? Did I do that? Yeah, okay. Then we'll talk about the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission and Medgar Evers. And then also we'll deal with social media remembers George H.W. Bush, and they remember the African Americans on social media remember the racist Willie Horton ad. As President George W. Bush passed away Friday, age 94. Okay, so Charles, right before the break, those just tuning in, we're speaking with Charles Farrell, Vice President of Programming for the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. We're talking about the progressive, African-centered educational programming, all types of things going on at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. A lot of these programs, like the Freedom School, people don't know exist. I keep hearing people, I go to meetings, and people say, when are we going to do something? When are we going to do something? People are doing something, you're just not one of them. Go ahead and talk about what else is going on.
I talk about what you just stated, because it's hard to be desensitized from the killing of African Americans, and so that's just another news story.
Sure.
You know, we have to really kind of take that very, very personally.
Sure.
As we looked at the '67 rebellion, that case on the second day of the
Algiers Motel
murders. We actually call that program the Algiers Teenage Murders by Racist Police, and dealt with that subject as not being separated from what's currently going on. Actually, out of University of Georgia, Dr. Akinyele Umojo had graduate students studying Operation Ghetto Storm, and at that time in 2012, it was identified that African Americans were being murdered by police or under some legal protection every 28 hours. Someone was killed. So this is a massive issue that we need to confront, and we like to do that, you know, in multiple ways. But we have to be really focused and educated, so that we're moving in what I call informed activism. I want to just talk for a moment, because Kwanzaa actually take us from into 2019, and 2019, the theme for next year is looking at 1619, Brother Michael, to 2019. 1619, those 400 years. The theme is resisting enslavement and fighting mass incarceration. Resisting enslavement, fighting mass incarceration, our struggle for human rights.
Yes.
And that's the fundamental issue here, that we're human beings. And
absolutely.
That, you know, you talk about how all lives matter, and how Africans came here, kidnapped, raped, violated, enchained, exploited for the labor, and again, no reparations, and continuing on. So we're going to start January Kwanzaa Amani Fate,
January
with
1st.
The Shrine of the Black Madonna.
Oh, yes.
It'll be out Tuesday, January 1st at 3 p.m. Again, a free program. We asked all families to come out. These are family-centered engagements for the entire family.
Exactly.
During Kwanzaa.
Exactly.
I was just, if I could,
go ahead,
just for a couple of minutes, just highlight a great saxophonist extraordinaire, an ambassador for our city to the world, James Carter, will be celebrating his 50th birthday at the Charles Wright on Thursday, January 3rd at 7 p.m. More details to follow about that program. But we're going to look at a case through our Liberation Film Series on Oscar Grant and Fruitvale Station, showing that film.
Right. Starring Michael B. Jordan, who was in Black Panther as Eric Killmonger. And he's in Creed 1 and 2. Creed 2's in theater right now.
A riveting, important film that's part of our partnership around Freedom from Fear, which is promoted at the Henry Ford. But we're going to have a panel moderated by Jacqueline Ramsey, a very strong sister who is with us as an intern and became a graduate student in social work at the University of Michigan. She's going to lead a youth-focused millennial panel to talk about this brutal murder of African youth by vicious police in this country.
Right. Now, what date is that taking place?
That is Saturday, January 12th at 2 p.m. Again, another free program. And then we start to see the programming for the exhibition that's coming. We call this program Thomas Jefferson and Slavery, Treason Against the Hopes of Mankind.
Okay, now what date is that program? Because I will be there.
It's January 15th at 6 p.m. by Paul Finkelman.
Yes.
Paul Finkelman, as you know, wrote
the article.
2012 an article called The Monster of Monticello.
Monster of Monticello.
In the Wall Street, the New York Times.
Yes.
That people can take a look at.
Let me just say, everybody, now, you've heard me talk about Dr. Paul Finkelman here on the show, because he wrote an article for theroot.com called The Three-Fifths Compromise, Why Its Taint Persists. And he deals with the real history of the Three-Fifths Compromise, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution. And he shows why it does not say we were three-fifths of a human being. That's just total misunderstanding of the Three-Fifths Compromise, okay? But he wrote an article November 30th of 2012, November 30th, 2012, 6 years ago now, The Monster of Monticello. The Monster of Monticello. And this deals with the treachery and the real history of Thomas Jefferson, a brutal slave owner, okay? So even though Jefferson needs to be studied, and he's significant in history because he was part of that 5-man committee that drafted the Declaration of Independence. So when you see the back of the $2 bill and people think that's the signing of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. No, that's the drafting of the Declaration of Independence, June 28th, 1776 by the 5-man committee. He also wrote the majority of the U.S. Constitution, right, which is the governing body of law for this country. This is what the U.S. Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, when they interpret law, is based upon the U.S. Constitution. So even though he was a white supremacist, brutal slave owner who thought that African people were mentally inferior, he talked about the way we smelled while he's raping African women, he still is somebody who needs to be studied. He ties right into the Haitian Revolution with the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. So he's a significant person in history, even though he was a white supremacist slave owner, and one of the founding fathers, as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing called many of the founding fathers. Go ahead, brother. That's me saying that. That's not Charles. That's me saying that. Go ahead.
Well, we want to take a critical analysis, and we do want to read. I would point people to actually primary source information, Thomas Jefferson's work.
Yes.
The notes on the state of Virginia, where he does highlight some very important facts, such as we lack the ability to reflect, that we run right into danger, that one of the races is bound to exterminate the other, that we get our skin from the color of bile.
But also the lack of ability to feel remorse. He talked about that as well.
Absolutely. So this is important opportunity to understand more critically the history of, so we're not bamboozled, as Malcolm would say.
Absolutely.
I want to just, if I could, talk about one other program when Harriet comes back, Harriet Washington, on Saturday, January 19th. And I know this is far ahead, but I just want to seed this final program, which is our annual Martin Luther King Day program. So this takes us to the middle, latter part of January, let's just say January 21st of 2019 is the annual MLK Day.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be celebrating that, Michael, with a keynote speaker for our breakfast program.
Okay.
With called the lecture is "The King in Us, Igniting the Activist Spirit." The King in Us,
Mm-hmm.
Igniting the Activist Spirit, by Gloria Brown Marshall,
Okay.
a constitutional lawyer out of John Jay, City
Mm-hmm.
College of New York, also one of the Association of National Association of Black Journalists, who has access to cover the Supreme Court, and she's
Mm-hmm.
written a brilliant book on the voting rights war and the NACP. So
Right.
she's going to be our keynote on that day. Then we have a breakfast, a paid program, $30 for breakfast, or people attend can buy a seat, a table for $300. And we're asking you to support our King Day programming. And after our 8 to 10 breakfast program, the museum is open until 5 p.m. for a full day of activity throughout the museum, for activities for every age group in our community. So
Okay.
let's celebrate that. I'm going to just close, if I could, Mike,
Sure.
with 2 final programs. Wednesday, the 23rd at 6 p.m., we're partnering with the University Musical Society out of Ann Arbor with Camille A. Brown and Dancers Cultural Arts Program. That's Wednesday, January 23rd at 6 p.m. Again, another FREE program. And then we're closing out with the theme of our year, 1619 and 2019,
Right.
Resisting Enslavement, Fighting Mass Incarceration, Our Struggle for Human Rights, by a fierce historian, Dr. Sundiata Chajwa, out of University of Illinois. He's going to set the theme for our year of programming, Saturday, January 26th at 2 p.m. I'm excited to come back and talk to you about our phenomenal programs for February.
Absolutely.
And our program is, as we start looking at Sally Heming.
Yes.
We have a series of very strong black women coming all over the country, like Brenda Stevenson.
Yes.
And Erica Armstrong Dunbar.
Oh yes, yes.
So many.
She wrote a book on a judge who ran away from when she was 22 years old, ran away from George Washington's plantation.
Called Never Caught.
Never caught
She'll
on a judge. That sister's bad.
She'll be in Detroit.
Yes.
We have so many powerful sisters. Talita LaFleur on the erasure of slavery from the plantations. It's the women leaders
Yes.
who we want to hear from this year, to put in context and deal with the whole issue of the sexualization, very powerful issues on not only African women in developing the labor force, but the rape of our women.
Absolutely. Now, how can people get, is there a email distribution list people can get on to find out when all these good
People
events
should
will take
become
place?
a member. Let them come down and
Okay.
invest in the museum and start getting membership. Let them engage with the museum on what their needs are.
Right.
Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is our institution.
Absolutely. So the website is thewright.org also, and they have a calendar there, WRIGHT, thewright.org. For people under 18 years old, for children, how much is it for an annual membership?
$5.
$5. So if your child has some baby Jordans, but doesn't have a 1-year membership to the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History for $5, something is wrong.
$60 for a family. If you're a senior citizens, over 62, $15. I mean, these membership fees are extremely meager, and we're asking people, if you have means, to give $5,000, $10,000. We have a lot of people in our community, athletes and others, who can say, listen, this is an institution
Right.
we want to invest in. We
Yes.
want to invest in the next generation.
Right.
We want to provide programming. I ask this of any institution, the Detroit
Yes.
Pistons,
Yes.
Ford Motor, Henry Ford, anybody who has to understand where we are in this day and time, and what the importance of Detroit is, and what's the importance of Dr. Wright's vision it's not always just talk. It's about doing some.
No, this is action. This, well, yeah. Well, you know, a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. And this has to be financially supported. We can't just rely on other people and say, I wish somebody would do this, I wish somebody would do that. You have people who are actively engaging and bringing into existence what they say should happen. Okay? Now, when people say, well, I don't know why I should bring my child there, you know, they want to go see Nicki Minaj, they want to go see Cardi B and all this other stuff, right? So there's studies that show the positive impact that African history, African American history has on our children. January 1st, 2013, AfricanGlobe.net had an article entitled Black Teens with Racial Pride Do Better in School. Black teens with racial pride do better in school. African American teenagers perform better academically when their parents instill in them a sense of racial pride. Now, this was a joint study by the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. See, these white institutions know the impact that our history and culture will have on our children and our people, and this is why oftentimes there is an effort to obscure it and to hide it from us. But a new study by the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University shows that when parents use racial socialization, such as talking to their children or engaging in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and connection, like taking them to Kwanzaa celebrations at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, enrolling them in the Freedom School on Saturdays at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, taking them to programs like with Dr. Harriet Washington at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. When they engage in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and connection, it offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development.
Well, actually,
go ahead,
Michael. It's really about fostering confidence.
Absolutely.
If the true story is understood about what's encoded in the pyramid, the high-level mathematical symbolisms in pi, the understanding of tracking, and that it was the African developed the calendar, developed astronomy, developed architecture, that the children will own that. They see that. They
Absolutely.
don't see that as being white. You know, as Amos Wilson talked about how white supremacy is encoded in the educational system when you talk about Pythagoras and Newton.
Right.
When you separate, you alienate the knowledge from its root source. So that's really something also that Malcolm talked about. If they can only understand their science. This is Dr. Wright. He went to Africa in '64 and came back understanding. If only our kids would understand their history prior to enslavement, prior to colonialization, that they would have more confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we got a couple minutes left. Let me just hit you with this most recent study. There are a number of studies that document this, right? TheRoot.com had an article that new studies find that positive feelings about blackness improve academic performance by black girls. This study just came out late last year. An article in the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. The Journal of Blacks in Higher Education focuses on a new study from Sharita Butler Barnes, a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, which finds that young black women with quote-unquote strong racial identity are more likely to be academically engaged, curious, and persistent. Read the article at TheRoot.com, and they have the link to the actual study. Persons, quote, we found that feeling positive about being black and feeling support and belonging at school may be especially important for African American girls, classroom engagement, and curiosity. Feeling connected to the school may also work together with racial identity, attitudes, improve academic outcomes. Okay, so this goes to the root. You know, your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. So at the foundation is Professor James Small and Dr. Linda Jeffries, who are two of Charles and my teachers, as they correctly teach us with the pyramid principle. It's African history and culture. That's the foundation that gives you your values, your interests, and your principles, and it influences your economic empowerment and your political empowerment. And this gives you your self-identity, your self-esteem, your cultural paradigm that you see reality through. So this is extremely critical. All this is taking place at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Okay, brother, one last word, and we got to get out of here.
Thank you, Michael, for the opportunity and, of course, the attention and focus of the listening audience.
Yes.
They've now received information. We have to take that now into an action mode.
Right.
So thank you again.
And how can if people want to say, Charles, look, I want to donate $1,000. I want to talk to you. I want to donate $1,000. I want to donate $5,000. What should people do? How do they get in contact with you?
They can call me actually on at 313-494-5835. My email is C Farrell. That's C as in Charles, F as in Frank, E as in Edward, double R in Robert, E as in Edward, double L in Larry, at the Wright, THEWRIGHT.org. Contact the museum, anyone. I mean, we're open to receive money at all doors and all spaces.
And let them know you heard about this on the African History Network show with Michael Imhotep. All right, Charles, thanks, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, we're coming up on a break. Hey, we'll be back in a few minutes. 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio, 313-778-7600. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so be sure to follow us here on Facebook, the African History Network. Follow us on YouTube, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube. Because a lot of these topics, you know, I deal with during the week in my broadcast, and I don't have enough time to get into them like I want to here. Okay, and we weren't on last week because the station was shut down for the holidays. Okay, so right now at the African History Network, this promotion is running through Wednesday. Spend $100 or more, get 20% off your entire order. Spend $100 or more, get 20% off your entire order. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, December 2nd, 2018. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll come to the phone lines in just a second. We'll go to Wadsworth, and then we'll go to Super Raside in just a minute here. But everybody, be sure to visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? We have my DVD lectures there. We have the bundle packs. We have the Africans that were here before Columbus bundle pack. We have digital downloads of a lot of my lectures. We have them in bundle packs there as well. And that helps support the African History Network. That helps us to stay on the air, keep broadcasting, keep doing the research. You can also donate to the African History Network through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. And if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or call me 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003. Okay, let's go to Wadsworth, line 1. Hey, Wadsworth, thanks for holding. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Okay, the question I want to ask you is, so what is civilization and marijuana doing with your black community?
What about the black community?
Okay, what is the civilization marijuana doing with your black community?
Your phone's breaking up a little bit, so you said, what is marijuana doing to the black community?
It's cigarettes.
Marijuana and cigarettes?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it doing to the black community?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's doing a lot. It's complicated. One, marijuana should have never been made illegal. It was made illegal basically because of Harry J. Anslinger in 1937, who was the first chairman of the National Narcotics Commission. And he was on a crusade to make marijuana illegal. So he lied in his congressional testimony in 1937. He wrote articles for newspapers and magazines, things like this. So it was made illegal. Now, I'm not an advocate for the recreational usage of marijuana. However, marijuana should be legal. I'm 47, I've never used marijuana at all, had no desire to do that. However, when we look at why it was made illegal because as he testified in front of Congress, he said that marijuana was being used by jazz singers, Filipinos, Mexicans, and Negroes. And he said that white women craved black men sexually when they were high on marijuana. This is documented. Okay, so as long as white people were using marijuana, now it was originally called hemp, H-E-M-P, or cannabis. Okay, the term marijuana was adopted in the early 1900s when Mexicans were coming to this country, and the bigotry and the prejudice and disdain associated with Mexicans was associated with the term. Marijuana is a Spanish word. That's not what they were calling it. All right, but so what's happening is that because it's been criminalized, and put them on hold for a minute, please, Rachel, because I'm hearing something in the background. Put him on hold for a minute. Put him on hold for a minute, please, Rachel, because I'm hearing something in the background on his end. Stand by, Wadsworth. So what happens is that because it's been criminalized, African Americans are disproportionately targeted for arrest, convictions, etc. when it comes to marijuana. Okay, this is historical, and even if we look at the war on drugs declared by Richard Nixon, June 17, 1971. If you look at the cover story for the April 2016 edition of Harper's Weekly, it was an interview by a journalist named Dan Baum, B-A-U-M. It was actually an article by Dan Baum, and it dealt with legalizing the war on drugs. And he interviewed John Ehrlichman. Okay, he did an interview back in 1994 with John Ehrlichman. John Ehrlichman was Richard Nixon's domestic policy advisor. John Ehrlichman ended up doing 18 months in prison, federal prison, for involvement in Watergate. Okay, but John Ehrlichman said that in the interview he did with Dan Baum, B-A-U-M, John Ehrlichman said that the war on drugs was targeting the anti-war movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, specifically the hippies, and it was targeting African Americans. Okay, so he said by associating marijuana with the anti-war movement and associating heroin with African Americans, he said we knew we could criminalize them, we could do surveillance, we could raid their offices, things like this, break up their communities. Now, in this situation, they chose to associate marijuana not with African Americans, but with mainly white people, and chose to associate the harder drug heroin with African Americans. But if we look throughout history, we see African Americans are disproportionately targeted when it comes to arrests for marijuana, things like this. Okay, and then when we deal with nicotine, even though nicotine is legal, cigarettes, nicotine is one of the hardest things to break the habit of, and those who suffer from nicotine addiction will tell you this. Okay, and that is doing a job on the African American community as well, but is not illegal. So on another level, marijuana is even worse. Now, I'm not an advocate for the recreational usage of marijuana. Okay, I've never used it a day in my life, don't plan to. However, it should be legal so it's not criminal. So we're not criminalized. Okay, for it. Wadsworth, did you have another question? Hey, Wadsworth, turn your radio down in the back, please. Turn your radio down in the back. Okay. When you call in people, you got to turn your radio down in the back. Okay, did you have another question, Wadsworth?
Yeah, I do. So when they made marijuana illegal in the state of Michigan, do you feel that is that going to hurt the black community, or is that going to help us?
You said when they made it legal, because it goes into effect December 6th, the legalization of recreational marijuana usage. Okay, you're saying, is that going to help African Americans or hurt us?
Yeah.
It can do both. One, it can do both. One, it decriminalizes it. Okay, on a state level. Now, it's still illegal on a federal level, but it decriminalizes it on a state level. However, it could encourage some people to use it more, okay? Because at the same time, I still, at the same time, there are restrictions on it. So you can't show up to work smoking marijuana. If you walk into your job, even though it's legal smoking marijuana, something probably gonna happen to you. Okay, so even though it's just like alcohol, most jobs you can't show up to work drinking alcohol, especially if you're operating heavy machinery. So even though it's going to be legal, there's still restrictions on it. Okay, so if you're driving using marijuana, you're probably going to be pulled over by the police. You'll probably be ticketed. Hopefully you have insurance. Hopefully you have a valid license. Okay, so the people have to understand like the actual law and what it does mean and what it does not mean. But it should be decriminalized. It should have never been made illegal in the first place. When you study the history of drug laws in this country, as long as white people were using heroin, as long as white people were using cocaine, there was no problem. When other people, the first drug laws in this country were the anti-opium laws in 1875 in California, targeting specifically Chinese men. As long as white women were using opium, there was no problem. When Chinese men are using opium, then the fear is, what will these Chinese men do when they're high on opium? Will they try to rape white women? As long as white men were using cocaine, it was fine. But when African American men are using cocaine, February 8th, 1914, the New York Times had a huge article dealing with how Negro cocaine fiends have turned to sniffing since alcohol became illegal because of prohibition. And this article from the New York Times, February 8th, 1914, over 104 years ago, dealt with the fear of what happens when African American men are high on cocaine. And it talked about them having superhuman strength. There was a fear that African American men high on cocaine would rape white women, and they were asking the question, do police now have to carry a .45 caliber handgun to kill a Negro high on cocaine because a .38 is not powerful enough to kill him? Okay, so this is all historical. All right, Wadsworth, thanks for calling. I got to get this other call. Read the article from theatlantic.com from June 12, 2014. How neuroscience reinforces racist drug policy. How neuroscience reinforces racist drug policy. Okay, and in the article, among other things, they talk about Harry J. Anslinger. And they talk about how the campaign infamously led by the first director of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Harry Anslinger, culminated in the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, federal legislation that prohibitively taxed cannabis and hemp. Harry J. Anslinger had also become particularly adept at using public media to propagandize the evils of marijuana. In his essay, Marijuana, Assassin of Youth, Marijuana, Assassin of Youth, was published in the American Magazine in 1937. In this article, Harry J. Anslinger offered panic-inducing musings like, quote, how many murders, suicides, robberies, criminal assaults, holdups, burglaries, and deeds of maniacal insanity it causes each year, especially among the young, can only be conjectured. No one knows when he places a marijuana cigarette to his lips whether he will become a joyous reveler in a musical heaven, a mad insensate, a calm philosopher, or a murderer. Okay? Now, sensationalism, so the article goes on to say, from theatlantic.com, sensationalism like this was specifically aimed at a white readership that might worry about such an unfathomably dangerous ethnic drug getting into the hands of his children. Harry J. Anslinger's congressional testimony. Listen to me. Harry J. Anslinger's congressional testimony directly betrayed his racist motivations to enact federal legislation against marijuana. Quote, there are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., he said, and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Quote, their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana usage. This, listen to me, people, this is Harry J. Anslinger, the first chairman of the National Narcotics Commission, testifying in front of the U.S. Congress. He said, quote, this marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others, end quote. This is why it was made illegal. Go read this article. This is history. To understand what exists today and the conditions that exist today, the policies, the things like this, you have to understand what took place in the past. You have to understand a sequence of historical events. How neuroscience reinforces racist drug policy. Okay, from theatlantic.com. Let's go to Super Rashidi, line 2. Super Rashidi, thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, I got two comments.
Go ahead.
One would be about the African American Museum, and then the other one is about Colin Kaepernick.
Go ahead.
But first, let me say that it's about marijuana and the law that was passed. I think it's going to be reversed. I don't think it's going to be any recreational weed for too long here in Detroit or the Metro Detroit area, because you got real nasty attitudes. You got a lot of littering. You got a lot of bad, just bad mindset. And then the kids going to be even more wackier, and then people driving crazy. And then when the insurance goes up, guess what? Why is it going up? Because, hey, you got more people smoking marijuana and, more freely now. So I think it's going to be reversed, and only time will tell, but it'll be the right call, because this is a very dense, populated, inner city situation. And I don't care what color you is. Most inner cities probably shouldn't have, I don't care what color you is, shouldn't have too many freely open drugs anyway, because they lacing them with all type of stuff, and then it's going to encourage kids even more. But with that being said, the African American Museum situation, I wanted to talk to your guest that was there, because, but actually I want to give out a number as well for the African American Museum situation. It's a number that I want to give out that people can call to protest, to let George Hamilton know. Do not put up the president, the one that they're trying to put in the African American Museum, the one that was
Thomas Jefferson, the Thomas Jefferson exhibit.
This gentleman's name is George Hamilton, and if everybody calls this number 313-494-5800, and let him know we do not want Hamilton, George Hamilton, right?
Thomas Jefferson.
I'm sorry. We don't want Thomas Jefferson in the African American Museum. So the number to call is 313-494-5800. And his name is George Hamilton. And that's Thomas Jefferson that we don't want to the African American Museum. Now, all of that is brought about from corporate sponsorship. And I wanted to ask your guest about that, but you probably know what the deal is. African Americans, we still own it, but for some reason, how are these corporate people, how are they allowed to put Thomas Jefferson up in the museum, which is just
okay, I'll give it that. And Charles is on the museum side, so he doesn't, a lot of things dealing with the protest, things like this, Charles doesn't have anything to do with. That's why they bring it up when he was on the air. I'm coming to a segment in a minute here dealing with the protest. We may have to hold it the next week because we only have 20 minutes left in the show. This is a traveling exhibit. This is not an exhibit exclusive to the Charles H. Wright Museum. The exhibit started in Dallas at the African American Museum in Dallas, okay? So this is a traveling exhibit that's going to a number of museums, and it deals with, there's a good article from blackamericaweb.com by Michael Cotman, and it gives some background information. The exhibit tells a story of slavery on the Monticello plantation, which was Thomas Jefferson's plantation. It tells it from the perspective of 6 enslaved African families over a period of time on the plantation. Okay, for the exhibit that's touring around, they added in an additional section dealing with Sally Hemings and her history, but it's not a Sally Hemings. Not saying you're saying this, but some people said this. I've heard a whole lot about this. It's not a Sally Hemings exhibit. Sally Hemings is just one aspect of the exhibit, and the exhibit has over 300 artifacts in it, works of art and documents representing Jefferson's legacy of slavery that are going to be on display, and a lot of these artifacts have never left the Monticello plantation either. Okay, so the name of the article from blackamericaweb.com is called "A New Traveling Exhibit Highlights Thomas Jefferson's Legacy of Slavery." A new traveling exhibit, just like a new traveling exhibit highlights Thomas Jefferson's legacy of slavery. That's at blackamericaweb.com. People should read that. Go ahead with your last comment.
Yeah, so let me get this straight before I go on to the Kaepernick situation, which we're most definitely going to disagree about the Kaepernick situation. Now, let me get this straight about the African American Museum. You're saying that it's not permanent. This display is not permanent.
It's a traveling.
It's just something that travels.
It's a traveling exhibit.
When it comes to the museum.
It started in Dallas. It's a traveling exhibit, just like a lot of exhibits travel across the country to different museums. This is a traveling exhibit. It started in Dallas. It's going to a number of different museums. It was going to be in February at the museum, but from my understanding, it's going to be moved to March. It's not a. It's not. It's not.
It's a rotation. It rotates all around. It rotates all around the United States of America. It's a rotation type of thing.
And a number of different museums across the country, just like a lot of exhibits do. Go ahead with your next comment, because
that needs to be stopped. Most definitely, it most definitely needs to be stopped. But now Kaepernick, the last thing I heard that he said that he would not protest anymore if he got back into the NFL, and it's a good chance that he may be able to get with the Detroit Lions.
Where'd you hear that? Wait. Where'd you hear that he said that? Where'd you hear?
This was, I'm talking about from my account, from what I've seen on the internet. If this was back in 2017, he said that he wouldn't, that he wouldn't take another knee again.
That's not accurate. That's not accurate.
You were saying that recently he said that he would take a knee again. And when did you hear this?
That was in the last few months. He said that he would not stop protesting. He said he would not stop protesting, as Eric Reed has not stopped protesting, who was the second one to take a knee, who was his teammate with the San Francisco 49ers.
Which I think is most definitely bad. He shouldn't know. He made his point already. So basically, he can help out the cause more by going back into the NFL and playing, and then going outside of the NFL after he's finished with work and putting up programs and things of that nature. He'll have more than enough money. But here's the thing, though. He may be able to be with the Detroit Lions because Mrs. Ford spoke out for him. I don't know if you heard about that. She spoke out and said that's his right. That's his God-given right to take a knee and protest against the police brutality situation. So
that's a change on what she was saying last season, because last season she told the players on the Lions, she said she basically give them whatever they wanted if they stopped protesting. So that's a change. Mm-hmm.
She just changed her mind.
Well, yeah, because they're getting too much backlash. They're getting too much backlash from it, and the league had to even change the new rule that they were putting in place, and not put that in place as well, because it was not agreed to by the Players Association, which is the players' union.
They tried to find people for it, but they couldn't make that happen.
They had to reverse it. Yeah.
They know better. But here's the thing, though. Kaepernick should not protest anymore. He needs to go and finish his career and have a fruitful, long career and take care of his business in the NFL. He made his point. That's my point. You know what I'm saying? Because him still taking a knee is not stopping anything with these police doing what they're doing. Now, if he wanted to have an actual program or putting stuff in place, trying to work with Oprah, sitting on her butt, ain't really doing nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? Oprah and Jordan and all of them, working with them more closely to make it stop, to be able to deal with the attorney generals and prosecuting people.
Right.
And I'm all for it. But constantly keep taking a knee. That's a no-no. Let the other people do that now.
All right. Thanks for calling. So Kaepernick, if you want to find out what Kaepernick is doing, go to his website, 7kaepernick.com. He can keep protesting. He can keep protesting and play in the NFL. So I don't know where people get that nonsense from, but whatever. Okay, so I want to go to this next story here. This is dealing with E.J. Bradford, and we may try to squeeze in the story dealing with the protests from the museum. On News One Now with Roland Martin this past week, Roland spoke with Benjamin Crump. Benjamin Crump is the attorney for the family for E.J. Bradford, okay, and he was shot and killed on Thanksgiving Day at the Galleria Mall. I think it was the Galleria Mall there in it was the mall there in Alabama. Okay, let's go to this clip from News One. Actually, this is from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay, let's go to this clip.
Shocked over the holiday weekend, where Evantic E.J. Bradford, 21 years old, was at a mall there in Hoover, Alabama. Well, shots were fired. A couple of people were shot. Police busted into the mall, and they shot Bradford in the face. They initially said that Bradford was the shooter. Well, then he wasn't. And so today, the police department finally apologized to the family for initially calling him the actual shooter as well. Now, Bradford was a caretaker for his father, who's a former police officer who was battling cancer, and he also worked full-time. Now, he was initially called an Army veteran, but the Army said he did not complete basic training and was never certified as an officer. Now, Bradford did have a concealed weapon permit for the gun he was carrying that day, and joining us right now to talk about that is Ben Crump, who was hired by the family to be their attorney. And so, Ben, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, thank you, Roland, for talking about this important issue. You know, it's unbelievable that on Thanksgiving night, his parents got this news, not from the police having the courtesy to notify them, but they heard about it first on social media. So them finally coming to meet with us and in person apologizing to this broken-hearted, devastated mother and father was a first step. But as we've been saying all along, Roland, they don't need to say no more. Just release the video, because the video is going to tell us everything that happened that night leading up to his, what we believe, unnecessary death.
Again, when we talk about, so first of all, have the police actually, have they provided a timeline of exactly what happened that led to E.J. Bradford being shot and killed?
They have not, Roland. They haven't told family anything. Several witnesses in that mall has approached family, have called my law firm and given their accounts, and all of them to a warning say that E.J. Bradford, he was helping people get away from the shooting. He was helping get people out of harm's way. Several people have said he saved their life. He was a good guy. And so this whole suggestion that good guys need to have guns to stop the bad guys with guns from preventing these mass shootings only works, apparently, if you're not black. Because if you're black with a gun, the police never see you as a good guy, and they shoot and kill you, just like they did Janelle Robinson in Chicago.
We're going to the WXYZ story in the museum next.
Alabama.
Ben, hold on one second. That was a rally today, of course, there in Birmingham. And this is from one of the social media accounts. I'm going to take some of that. So here we go to my iPad, please.
And knock on her door to tell my nephew, to tell his daddy, your son is dead. I can't believe this. I can't believe this happened on Thanksgiving Day. No one came to the house to tell him that his son was laying in the...
Now, Ben, do we also know, were any officers wearing body cameras?
Apparently, all of them were wearing body cameras. Hoover spent a lot of money last year to make sure every officer was equipped with a body camera. And more important than that, there was mall security surveillance video rolling that will show us from the second EJ walked into that mall until the moment he was killed, everything he did. And we believe, like EJ family believe in his heart, it showed him doing something bad, they would have released that video already. And that's why they keep demanding the truth.
Ben, hold on one second. This is you speaking last night at a church rally last night in Birmingham.
They killed him. Shoot first and ask questions later. And this seems to be a pattern. Did any of you all hear about Janelle Robinson in Chicago? Shot him 12 times. A good guy with a gun who happened to be black. And maybe that's the caveat. Does America ever see that a good guy with a gun can be a black man?
Okay, stop it right there.
Let's speak to that.
Okay, so we run out of time here. Watch that. Roland has that on YouTube. Crump, if you are black with a gun, the police never see you as a good guy and they shoot and kill you. Follow Roland Martin on YouTube. You can watch all those clips there. Okay, and then read the article from, let's see, Washington Post had a really good article from November 25th. They shot the wrong man. Police said they killed a mall shooter, then said they made a mistake. Now, in this article, and Crump has talked about this in some other interviews I've seen that he's done, there were other people there at the mall who had their guns out also, but they weren't shot and killed on sight like E.J. Bradford was, okay? And he was legally carrying a gun as well. Another good guy with a gun, black good guy with a gun, shot and killed by the police. Haven't heard anything from the NRA. Okay, lastly, because we're running out of time here, I want to get to this story here from WXYZ. So, you know, we've talked about the Coalition for Black Legacy at the Charles H. Wright Museum to say the progressive programming at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. They held their press conference this past Thursday at the Cass Commons. WXYZ Channel 7 was there to cover it. Here's what happened.
Dedicated to African American history, responding to critics who say community input is being ignored.
Action News reporter Simon Shaquette shows us what's fueling this anger and why the museum isn't backing down.
Members of the African American community are speaking out today here in Detroit about troubling changes at the Charles H. Wright Museum. They say they're not happy with leadership as well as some of the new exhibits.
We have had to start back in the dark ages because of the assault on our community here in Detroit.
Community activist Tahira Ahmad is furious with a museum she says is supposed to be honoring the history of African Americans. Specifically, her anger surrounds a couple of issues, including a display planned for early 2019 that deals with a plantation once owned by Thomas Jefferson.
That means rape. That means murder. That means amputating people who wanted to leave.
Another member of the Coalition for Black Legacy at the Charles H. Wright Museum, Abdul Akil, says that community representatives also don't have enough presence on the board. At a press conference today, Akil was also critical of the departure of former CEO Juanita Moore.
The current board does not represent a cross-section of the African American community.
Akil wants to be sure the community has a strong say in choosing the next CEO. In the meantime, the museum is responding with a message of its own. In a statement to Action News, a spokesperson saying, quote, "We value feedback, perspectives, and input from the community and have taken steps to address concerns from this particular part of the community." It goes on to say plans were laid for the Paradox of Liberty exhibition under the leadership of now retired President Juanita Moore. It's a powerful exhibit that tells the story of Sally Hemings and other families who were enslaved at the Monticello plantation from their perspective.
This coalition says if the museum board continues not to take them seriously, their next step could be legal action. From Midtown, Simon Shaquette, 7 Action News.
Okay, so check out this article, WXYZ.com, Channel 4, WDIV was there. You know, I know basically everybody involved in the coalition. I'm part of it as well. You've heard me have, we had Sister Neb here on the show. We had Dr. Kafense Chike as well. Community group speaks out against changes at Charles H. Wright Museum in Detroit, November 29, 2018, WXYZ.com. And as I said before, when I had Charles on here on the show, now Charles is not part of this coalition, so I don't want people to conflate or confuse the issues. But Thomas Jefferson is a significant person in history who needs to be studied, and the truth needs to be told about him. And read the article from Dr. Paul Finkelman, the monster of Monticello, and read the article from also blackamericaweb.com that I talked about to get some background information on this exhibit. A new traveling exhibit highlights Thomas Jefferson's legacy of slavery by Michael Cotman, blackamericaweb.com. All right, hey, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the current promotion. Spend $100 or more, get 20% off your entire order. Information's there, right there on the home page. We have our online classes that are on demand. You can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behaviors, not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Pastor Mo. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.
9, 10, 8.
All right, we got to get out of here, guys. Talk to y'all later.